We will now take a look at Jainism. Jainism began as a protest within Hinduism in the 6th century BC. Again, a very ancient religion. The founder was called Mahavira by his disciples. Not his original name, but his original name avoids history somehow, and what we have is what his disciples later called him, Mahavira. Mahavira was believed to be the last Tirthankara. A Tirthankara is a bridge builder between life and nirvana, not a god, not a deity, not a spirit, but a reality that has the mission of aiding people through a variety of means, mostly by setting an example of how to bridge or move successfully and with actually within one life into nirvana. He, in his younger years, grew unhappy, much like Siddhartha, the Buddha. He grew unhappy with his life of wealth and privilege, and so he left his family. And tradition has it that he tore out his hair, literally by hand, and joined the ascetics, those who were there to do without and quite often do harm to themselves. The ascetics, he found, however, to his thinking, were not severe enough. One of the reasons he conceived that nirvana was hard to achieve and all but impossible to achieve in a single life is that the ascetics that were performed by individuals within their lifetime were simply not severe enough. That while they may be doing without the majority, if not all, of any of life's basics or especially pleasures and so forth. Still, that was not enough. That there were other people that did without, sometimes by force of their circumstances. That in order to speed up the entire moksha process, that it was necessary to inflict pain, to make your withdrawal and asceticism all the more severe. And so he became much more rigorous about his asceticism. For example, he never stayed more than one night in any one place, always on the move, never allowing himself the comfort or security of any kind of roots. Second, as an adherent of aisma, uh, which means non-injury to life, he stayed off the roads in the rainy season to avoid stepping on insects that might have surfaced, from the soil. And during the dry season, he swept the road before him for the same reason. You may have seen the pictures, and if you've watched the videos, perhaps you've seen images of Jains who are walking about bent over with small brooms, sweeping as they take steps and as they walk around. He strained all water to keep from swallowing any insects that might be there and thus doing violence to them or injuring their life in some way. He begged for food and he refused to eat raw food, again with some understanding that there may be some living organism still within that food. And he preferred what was left over from someone else's table. Two reasons: normally because what was on the table had been cooked, therefore it was permissible for him to eat, and second, it fit within the milieu of begging. When dogs were set on him, as they often were, he allowed himself to be bitten. He did not try to fight off the dogs. And one might wonder, well, why are they setting dogs on this rather harmless individual, someone committed to non injury to life? Well, it may be because he always went around naked. So you had this naked beggar um, who, you might say, let himself go to whatever injury or hurt or harm might come his way. So he was scarred, generally bloody and bruised. So he was rather a scary figure for most people. After 12 years, though, of living this lifestyle, it is believed by the adherents of Jainism that Mahavira reached moksha, or even in this life, he moved to a form of nirvana. He was regarded by his followers as a Jain, thus the name Jainism, Jain meaning conqueror. And it was applied in its time to anyone who conquered anything or anyone else. For example, a great general or a chieftain, political leader. If they had achieved some sort of great victory over others, they were referred to as Jain. And this same title then was ascribed to Mahavira in the belief that he had conquered the forces of life, all that would keep him from moksha and nirvana, from getting off the samsara, the wheel. All of this was out of the way now, because in this life he had found the way, and even before having to die, he had achieved moksha. Uh, and he must have been something of a very tough individual, because even after all of this self-inflicted brutality and the violence that was done against him by others, he lived to the age of 72. In a time when living to 35 was considered to be an old man by the norm of mortality. The agamas, Agamas, the agamas or precepts, are the Jain scriptures, and they are believed to be the actual sermons of Mahavira. Thus, the agamas are understood to be the very words and teachings of Mahavira himself. By 80 AD, some number of years, 680, almost 700 years after the birth and founding of Jainism, there came a division over what was the true meaning of Jainism, as the agamas were not simply read but put into practice, and then from practice studied for the sake of interpretation and deeper meaning, what was really there, mining out what many considered to be the hidden truths beneath the surface of the agamas. With various interpretations, there came a split. And so Jainism ultimately divided into two sects. First, the Vetambra, Svetambra, which means white clad, rejects nudity, believes women can find moksha, and allows them into Jainist monasteries. So the Vestimbra sect is, of course, the more liberal sect, took a more liberal view of Mahavira's teachings and the agamas. Then the Gigambara, which means sky clad. It's very conservative. It accepts nudity, but with limits, with total nudity, whether public or private, being reserved for those who are considered the most holy. They do not have to have moksha ascribed to them in this life as yet, but they are so close, so holy, according to Jain teaching, that they can go totally nude. Women cannot achieve moksha, and they cannot enter temples or monasteries. This group is mostly found in southern India. The basic philosophical worldview, sort of a summary snapshot of the basic worldview, a worldview upon which both sects agree, though they diverge at finer points. Uh, this worldview says uh, life is a dualism, that all souls are encased in matter. As long as the soul is so encased, it is in bondage. The goal, then, of life is to liberate the soul from this matter. Because the world is a dualism, we must avoid the flesh, because it is the flesh that makes up this encasement. This must be done by the individual. So in Jainism, the gods, though not denied in existence, the gods are of little consequence, and prayer and worship are useless. Thus, you do not have Jain temples and Jain mosques and Jain teaching centers to large degree. Now, there are those centers, as one of our videos makes clear. There are those centers where the teachings of the agamas and later commentary is opened up and made clear, but it's not to be considered as a seminary or a university, an institute necessarily for the study of Jainism. It is more a place where the teachings are exposed, and one deals with those teachings on their own terms. So again, the dualism here in Jainism is the encasement of the flesh, the material, that encasement which holds inside the soul, the spiritual. So we have material, we have spiritual. The aim of life then is to find that best means by which the spirit can break free of the material. And it's at that point, whether it occurs in this life or it occurs after this life, it's at that point that moksha is achieved. And if it is to be achieved, it really all rests upon the individual. The gods can do nothing to aid you in escaping that encasement. Prayers and worship, meditation, all the things that were common, say, to the Hinduism out of which Jainism came, were rejected. This is totally a self-driven activity. Jain monks take 5 essential vows. Number 1, non-injury to all life. The Hamisa is of course this statement, and it is taken extraordinarily liberally or conservatively. For example, part of this commitment is to be vegetarian, to eat nothing that once had any form of flesh-bound life in it. To avoid leather, not to wear leather, not to use instruments of leather, things of this nature, because leather was once a living entity. Always speak the truth. Second, often their search for truth leads to the view that truth is relative rather than absolute. In fact, I think that the word often here should be replaced with always. It is just a fact of life that without any specific hard teachings, the individual is going to be left to devise that truth on their own terms. Thus, it will, from individual to individual and group to group, always be relative. Third, take nothing that does not belong to them. 4, renounce all sexual pleasures of any sort. Mahavira renounced women altogether. Now, unlike some who followed him and some of other religions, he did not emasculate himself. He was not castrated, but he simply, by force of will, renounced all sexual pleasures. Number five is to renounce all, and underscore the word all, to renounce all attachments. True Jains, and especially the monks among Jains, must renounce their families. They must leave families. If they are married with children, at the time they become a Jain, at the time they commit to become a monk, they must leave them. And when we say leave them, we're not talking about simply, moving to another location, an occasional visit, an occasional bit of support. None of that. It is leave in the most absolute terms. It's as if that family ceases to exist from this earth. They are totally and completely detached from them and committed only to one thing, and that's themselves and the achievement of moksha. Jains believe that all five vows must be kept by monks. Now, you can be a Jain without having to keep all these five vows. It is assumed that if you want to achieve moksha, in time you will accept all of these uh, vows, but you can, in the meantime, be a Jain and go as far on your journey as you can without accepting and abiding by all five of the vows. But that is not the case if you choose to become a monk. All of these vows must be accepted, must be adhered to, and must be adhered to rigorously. The first three, with all of that said, the first three must be kept by all Jains. A Jain layperson may marry and have a family, understanding that this is not the ideal life, again, according to Jainism, and that moksha will not be experienced this time around. You will have to go through the cycle of rebirth, come back into life again, do it again, and do it the right way this time by committing to and keeping all five of these Jain vows.